You're watching Every Days and Saturdays, USMC veteran. Let's go, baby. And here's your host, Brian. And what's going on, friends and family? Thank you guys so much for joining me on another great day, another great interview. And I am super excited for my next guest. But before we get going, you know how we do. If you're not doing good out there, let's, reach out to someone, try to get some help. There's always the crisis lifeline, 988 for you veterans out there. Press 1. Hopefully they could put you in the right direction and get you some help. You're always free to email me every day is a Saturday, 365@yahoo.com. Just remember, you're not alone out there, and it's okay not to be okay. And don't be afraid to reach out, because we're tired of losing our brothers and sisters out there. We're tired of losing anybody out there. Stay with us. We need you guys. And also, if you guys haven't had a chance to go subscribe to the YouTube channel, you can at EDAS-USMC veteran, and give it a little subscribe. Don't cost a thing. And that will help us get some of these great stories out here. All right. Well, the next guest right here, I'm excited to have this conversation. She is basically an Army brat. She grew up, her father is an Army veteran. Her uncles were in the Army. So she has a lot of, I'm sure, experiences with living under the roof of a veteran and how that may have, transpired and worked into her life today. She's also a TEDx speaker. She is the founder of Crown Yourself and Communication Queens, and she's a best-selling author of Make Every Podcast Want You. And here to talk all about herself and what she's got going on is Kimberly Spencer. What's going on, Kim? How are you doing?
Hey, Brian. I'm doing amazing.
Thank you so much.
I feel very on fire from our pre-conversation.
I know, my gosh. We went about 45 minutes before we even got started. So that's a great thing that we can just easily have a conversation. And so I'm really excited to have this conversation with you and get to know more about you. Kind of give us the background, how you grew up. I know your dad was, in the Army. You can kind of briefly, touch on that however you want and let us know how that life was for you. Where your path ended up leading you and what you got going on today, because you got a lot going on. So
yeah, my it's funny in your intro, like I've never considered myself an Army brat because my dad, not like my cousins were, they grew up on bases. My dad had left the military by the time that I was born, and to pursue entrepreneurship, which all his brothers thought was insane. They're like, wait, you're leaving the security and stability of the military to go pursue a career. At first it was a career in acting in Hollywood, but you kind of need a bridge job in LA to be able to support yourself in that. So
right.
He started cutting trees and climbing up people's trees and built a tree business. And he ended up building it with my mom. But the lingering effects, he was definitely a military brat as well.
The Army never left him.
The Army never left him.
Correct.
He grew up on military bases and whatnot with my grandfather. His father was a medical nurse in the Navy. And so I always grew up with the joke that, I had to get 7 scars before I could join the Navy. But the experiences of what my dad grew up with and the challenges of his childhood, that certainly never left. And what was really hard was when his parents passed away. The worst years of his alcoholism and his abuse came between the ages of about when I was 4 to about when I was 8. And that was in the time that both my grandma, his mom, passed and his dad passed. And now my dad passed in 2021, and knowing what it means to lose someone who you have a complex relationship with, where you love them, you totally love them, and they were also your greatest challenge in life for a while. that's a really hard place to be if you don't have the tools and the mental health tools to be able to navigate that. And so when my dad passed, it actually gave me a lot of compassion because I had the awareness of, oh my God, those years that were the hardest in my childhood, when he was processing his mom and his dad passing, his only tool that he had was alcoholism. And that was the only thing he knew because the pain was too much. And so it gave me a lot of forgiveness and compassion for those years.
That was how he coped with the pain. I mean, he lost his parents.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, it's his history with his parents was very sordid. And he grew up worshiping his father. He loved his father. In the end of his life, he wanted to have his father's name as a part of his brand that he was building. He wanted it to have it on his tombstone, and that was not honored by the military when they were commissioning the tombstone. But he loved his father very much, but his mother had a lot of mental health problems, and the challenges that he faced growing up of different forms of abuse and the gaslighting and constant moving because she would disagree with a neighbor. It was really hard for him. And so now being this third generation and seeing the power of what we carry with us generationally in our genes and with us, and how we also have the power to heal. Like when my second son was born, which was right after my dad passed, I knew that he came to heal the brother wound. My intuition as a mother just knew that. And I saw the challenges of my dad lost his brother in Vietnam. He lost his other brother to suicide. And that happened a few years ago. And it really spiraled my dad downhill to the point that when he
His
got
brother was in the Army too, right? The one that committed suicide, or
Air Force.
Air Force? So he was in the military though. Okay.
Oh yeah, all of them in the
So
military.
he became a statistic.
All of them in the military.
Okay.
And I think it's and most of my cousins on that side are in the military as well. And I think that when we can see just the suffering and the silent suffering. I mean, in my TED talk, it was such a divinely orchestrated TED talk because it was 10 months after my dad had passed. And I talk about how the mental resilience of making decisions and decision making and leadership. And I work with a lot of leaders as a coach. I've been doing that for 9 years. But when I shared part of my dad's story of like my challenges growing up, and like when he got sick, he grew up in this like mental man's alpha male toughness where he's not sharing his emotions. His feelings were not acknowledged. His feelings were dismissed. He struggled with mental health and addiction throughout his entire life. It was a real challenge. And like every year for the past 5 years before he passed, I had taken him to the hospital for some medical emergency. One time it was because he was too drunk, and like we thought he was having a stroke, but it turns out he had just driven home
Little way hard on it,
way over the legal limit. And that was the moment that allowed me to stage his intervention in 2016. And I do have to say that one of my proudest moments is in staging that intervention, because one of his proudest accomplishments as an adult was, and right up until he passed, was he said in November, he passed in November of 2020. He said, "Kimmy, I'm 4 years sober." And that was an amazing feat. Now it took him 4 years sober off of alcohol. It was 2 years off of opioids. And that was where he had a lot of the challenges, because those are just, he got a lot of permission from a lot of authorities, aka doctors, to take these pills for his pain. And
yeah, and that was about the opiate when they had the crisis with all that. They were really pushing that off to a lot of people. And people were getting hooked.
Yeah.
And wanting more.
Hooked and from multiple doctors. Like when I looked I was like, whoa, okay, so you have one doctor over here who prescribed you Vicodin, and you have another doctor over here who prescribed you Oxy, and like, and they aren't cross-referencing a chart. I'm like, we got a problem with the system. And that's something that pissed me off systemically. Because I'm like, we need to have an integration so that doctors, multiple other practitioners understand what they're working with. Because would you prescribe something to an addict who isn't like, he's been an addict for years?
You could go to 10 different doctors and all 10 of them give them something. That's not going to be a good outcome.
Yeah. I mean, my dad was taking 10 Vicodin a day at one point. He was a freaking horse.
He was destroying his organs.
Yeah. He was it took a lot to take him out. But the experience of seeing that, seeing him navigate that, and then like he eventually, once he got sober off of alcohol, he started his sobriety journey and wanted to get sober off of.
So he was receptive towards the intervention, right?
I mean,
that was a wake up call for him, and he really responded well to it, because a lot of some people would say, "Fuck that, I'm out." You know what I mean? So
it was. I mean, that was almost what I said to him, but in a loving way of saying, like, we all love you. Like, here are our boundaries. So, and I think that's something that really most people struggle with, is holding that boundary.
Did you guys just do it as a family, or did you guys actually have a person, like an interventional?
We just did it as a family, and I just led the charge.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good. Well, that's awesome.
I mean, it was, and I rallied his friends. I rallied his supporters. I rallied people he'd been past sobriety.
So this was a big thing, huh?
It was a big, well, it was the final straw for me, because I had just gotten married to my husband, my now husband, who I've been married to for almost 13 years. Well, we've been together for 13 years, married for 11.
Nice.
And that moment of shifting my own identity of like, how do I, like, we were thinking of having kids. I was like, I'm not going to bring my child into the home of an addict. I would love to have grandma and grandpa have a relationship, because my husband's parents have passed, but I was not going to have a relationship with an alcoholic, abusive father and put my children at risk for experiencing the things that I experienced.
Right. I mean, what kind of parent would you be after knowingly you're taking them to someone who you had bad experiences with?
Yeah. And so that's
a hard decision, I'm sure.
Oh, it was one of the toughest ones that strengthened the most amount of courage, because then I had to hold the boundary. And that's the hard part. I said, as long as
that boundary, you got to hold the line.
Hold the line. And I think honestly it helped, because I have a wonderful husband who he also contributed in the intervention, but he also, like, when the boundary was crossed, because it was crossed once, to like, because people, like we were talking about earlier, people like to test the boundaries.
Yeah. You set that line, that dude.
Yeah. And my husband stepped in, and he was like, there is no way your father will talk to you like that. There is no way he will treat you. He said, you may be his daughter, but you are my wife. Right. And I was like,
that's good. He held the line.
Yeah. And that understanding that. And so when we held the boundary, and I also set the terms that my mom had to go to codependent training, and Codependence Anonymous. Because there's two people in this relationship, and my mom and dad were married for 52 years.
Yeah.
So, and to say they went through everything together. They went through every form of thing that most people would go through divorces on, and she stuck by him. So that experience of seeing them both step up and do it simultaneously was super powerful. And I remember 2018 was like the best year that I ever had with my dad. And it was really only about 6 months. And one of my favorite moments is I was recently reading Brendon Burchard's Life's Golden Ticket. And it's a fiction book. I love Brendon Burchard. I've been a certified high performance coach since 2018. But I gave this book to my dad, and I found it that he wrote it, because he would always write his name and the date that he read a book. And I just read it recently, and I didn't know that he had read it. And I found his notes in it. And through reading that book, he made the decision to make better choices for his life, and to show up not only just as a sober person, but as a better person. And even though we only had about 6 months of the best relationship that I've ever had with him in his human form, that was so special, and it felt like
You
time.
needed that.
I needed that. Because then in
That's a
that,
good closure for you, and I think it probably is helping you through your grieving process probably as well.
oh yeah, I mean, that was, I'm very much at peace. Like when he passed, I felt it. I knew he was going to go. I gave him permission. He was unconscious, but I gave him permission. I said, it's okay. I was like, I got mom, we're good.
Yeah.
And if like, I feel on the other side, in a way, he's guided me, to just, to where we live now. I mean, my mom laughs. She's like, we have donkeys and we live on a farm. She's like, your father is laughing from heaven. But that experience, it got curtailed when his brother committed suicide, and that crushed him. And
Ah,
then that took him to choosing to take himself off of his own medication and off of his own antidepressants, which led him to suicidal ideations, which led him to the VA hospital and the psych ward. And getting him out of there was so challenging. And I put him into a rehab facility that I think actually did more harm than good.
mm,
Um, because unfortunately the rehab facility, it didn't allow him, it let him sit in the shame. And I think that that's hard, because the facility was built around Christian principles. I think the hard thing is, sometimes when you're taught, oh, I'm a sinner, I'm the sinner, and like there's nothing to say that you're not, and this is not about Christianity, because I am a Christian, but at the same time, it's like when you're taught this belief that's from a consciousness of shame, and you're at that
mhm.
consciousness level, you don't feel like you deserve goodness. You don't feel like you deserve love. You don't feel like you deserve to be living a full, beautiful life, especially when you're forced to face all the crappy things that you did as a human. And having that internal dialogue of forgiveness is really hard, when my dad had a lot of roots planted in fundamentalist Christianity. And that was a challenge to navigate, and he never really was the same. And so when
I
he,
totally get that.
yeah,
I was raised in the same type of household, and I've since been adult and been able to make my conscious own choices, but
yeah,
I get that.
yeah,
You're
it's
going to
revisiting the
hell.
relationship.
You hear a lot of that. I hate to say it, because I grew up Christian as well and stuff, but organized religion has put a shame on things to where they feel like when you make that mistake, oh my God, that's it. I'm going to hell. There's,
Yeah.
and we were being judged by our peers in such a way that really, actually, you're almost hurting the other person. It was subconsciously the way that they're doing that,
Mhm.
right? I was alienated too.
Yeah,
Because
I was too.
when I was in high school or junior high, I was kind of dressing like a gangster and not looking, all, like a
Mhm.
Christian kid. And they're like, don't play with that kid, da da da, And so when I needed them the most, they pushed me away. And
Mhm.
that's something I had to deal with later on in life, right? And that's the hard part with, the generations before us, is they were taught it's such a sign of weakness to not be okay, or
Yeah,
to express some kind of compassion, or we
or
couldn't even
vulnerability.
really like say, hey bro, I think you're doing a good job, you're gay, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
those are the kind of things that we dealt with growing up, and the generations before us, it was even worse for them,
Mhm.
so that's
Yeah,
why it's
conscious
great to have a
parenting
lot
is
of
very
these.
it's
That's why
more
it's
of a
great to have
modern
these
concept.
podcasts and stuff like that, to have these kind of conversations and stuff, so that way, because we're at that point now where we got to make that difference, right? And
Mhm.
some of us are still stuck there because that's the way we were raised, but some of us have broken away from some of it and then been able to kind of form our own opinions and life like that.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah.
it comes down to like learning how to reparent yourself as how you would like, how you would have liked to have been parent or how you needed to be parented.
Boom. And gosh dang, you know what's crazy? You just said that is I have a co-host that we've been doing a coffee talk. Her name's Marie, and she said the exact same thing.
No way.
She said the exact
Like,
thing.
Missy.
You got to parent your inner child. You got to
Mhm.
learn to love yourself as that kid again, right? And I think that a lot of us forget about that part of us. We just,
Yeah.
I was a kid, but sometimes you got to go back though, right? And give yourself some grace as a child, and give yourself some, you may have made some bad choices or bad experiences or whatever. That doesn't define you and who you are today. So you got to be a little bit, graceful and mindful of the inner child in you, and remember you as a kid and when you're parenting as well.
Yeah.
It's a crazy thing.
Yeah, it's so beautiful to witness it as a parent, and I like my second son, who looks exactly like my dad, and who I was pregnant with when I lost my dad.
Mm.
Um, he's super emotional, but he's like the toughest kid ever too. Like he's the one that I get notifications from of like, you need to come pick up your son. But
Yeah.
he's super tender and he loves connecting, and he
Is he
has
the second one or is
second
it? Yeah, it's always number two.
number two.
And
My
then
husband was the second child too, and I was like, oh, were you were this one too?
yeah, my sister's number two. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
always
there's
that
something
number
about the
two.
second child.
No kidding. It's no joke.
But I look at him and the way we're parenting him and raising him, I'm like, wow, if I threw him in a system of 50 years ago of how he would be parented for the way he acts, like I just think it would shut off that most beautiful part of himself, which is his emotions. And he is a tough kid. And on the surface, he is built. He is strong. He is sturdy. But and he's like the enforcer is what I say. But he also has the biggest heart. And I think when we can see, okay, what were those parts of myself that I didn't fully acknowledge or that I got in trouble for, that I was shamed for
We
as a
would have been
kid?
told to stop crying
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Stop
immediately.
crying, man
Go to
up,
your room.
go
Yeah,
yeah.
get a
Yeah. And
spanking.
kids
You
cannot.
really want to cry? You want to really cry?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And kids can't co-regulate. Like
Right.
no, they can't regulate themselves. They can't self-regulate. They are
I
only learn how to co-regulate up until the age of about
I
6.
remember crying and I uncontrollably cry,
Yeah.
right? When you're like you're trying to stop and you're just still going, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like I don't want to get a spanking again.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
it's because your nervous system is so
Yes.
wired. And so
Right.
like one of the things that when my son gets into a state where he's so hyper wired and he's just only emotions and he doesn't know how to calm himself down. There's no talking to him. There's no lecturing. You literally, when someone's in that level of emotional state, whether it's a child or an adult, there's no talking to them. There's no
It's
reasoning.
consoling
You
time.
have
There's
to just
no
sit
parenting
and
at that
breathe.
moment. Yes, you just
Yeah.
got to console them and get
Yeah.
them on the right track because they ain't hear nothing you're saying. If you're trying to be like, hey, well, you should be
Yeah.
doing this, they're done. They're shut. They shut off,
The biggest thing is to
immediately.
get them back in their body.
Yep, right.
And
That's a good one. Yep.
yeah, get them back in their body and breathing because they're in their head and their head. This is just this. And athletes have a saying that when you're in your head, you're dead. Um,
It's
and
facts.
so
That's a fact.
you got to get back into the body because your body is the domain of the subconscious mind. When conscious mindedness takes over and you have that circular thinking, that's when it's like, no, we gotta bring you back into home, into our earthly home, and breathe. And so I'll just sit with him and breathe and rock. And at the same time, that's also what my dad needed, like in those
Just to be
moments.
grounded again,
Yeah,
yeah, to have some kind of grounding, that's the thing is a lot of us we're not grounded anymore.
yeah. Well,
We're
and
losing
it's
that groundingness.
we haven't been taught to value that, to value
Right.
embodiment,
Sure.
because the thinking has been prized. Strategic thinking has been prized. Moving forward and just going for it and ignoring our body's cues to say, "Hey, I'm suffering. Like, help me." So we need to get back into our bodies. It was interesting. I was we had a bunch of friends over the other day, and there was an 8-year-old girl, and her mom, like, she wanted to jump off the jacuzzi into the pool, and all the other kids were doing it, but she was like super nervous. And her mom looks at me and she's like, "Oh no," she's like, "This is going to take a while." And I was like, "No, wait." And so I just got up there and I was with her through it, and I could see her. She was constantly like, she was wanting to jump, but she was getting in her head. And just wanted to, and I said, just like breathe, allow yourself to trust your body. But it's hard. What becomes hard is when your body has been abused, when your body has been violated. That's when we have been taught and conditioned to distrust our bodies. And I speak from experience because mine was in multiple ways. And from that experience, though, of learning how to rebuild trust with my body. And for me, this was, I mean, this can't happen for every person, but like for me, it came from naturally birthing my children. And that feeling of trust is just etched on my bones. But when I was up there on the jacuzzi with this 8-year-old girl, like just bringing her back, I saw the shift. I felt the shift, and you can feel it. You can feel it when you're with someone, but you just have to hold space. And so often we want to talk, we want to fix, we want to strap on our tool belt and fix the problem. And that's not always the case.
Facts. Yeah, I've been on that other side where, I'm one of those people too. There's a problem, I want to fix it, and sometimes fixing needs a little time. You sometimes you just can't go in there and just go put it. You need to get all the tools and all the equipment before you just go in there and start working on something, right? And I think that's it with a lot of times is we don't have the proper tools or thought process when we go into a problem and we want to go try to fix it, but we're not ready to fix it because we don't have the right tools in place. So we go there, and then everything gets out of.
Yeah, and you're trying to attack everything with a hammer when what you needed was a screwdriver.
Yeah, right. And now you're sitting there, and now all these other problems are intertwined into it too because you just came in ill prepared, and now you're in the defense mode as well as everything else. So when you're defensive, you're gonna start saying things tit for tat type deal. So.
Yeah. And I mean, I saw it.
It's hard to get there, but it's important. And that's why, I try to tell people, don't keep sweeping things under the rug and keep putting your problems in a filing cabinet and all that stuff. Take your time that you need to process it, but you got to work through it. It's not one of those, we'll just forget about it. No, because I assure you, and that goes for any relationship. You keep sweeping everything under the rug, that rug just gets so big that it can't even hide the crap no more, and the rug falls off, and there you go. You got a whole bunch of pile of stuff. So when you go to fight or you go to have a conflict resolution, here's all these other things getting thrown out. Years later, whatever you may have, however long you went without processing it, stuff, it rears its ugly head at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think candor is kind. And that's why I love the experiment that I've had for 13 years with my husband, where I was a chronic people pleaser, and I was very skilled at adapting my personality and who I needed to be in any sort of relationship, and hiding parts of myself. And after getting divorced from my ex, which I think I told you earlier, I ran off and pulled a Brittany when I was 22, ran off with the Navy man. He quickly deployed. And when I realized, we can't get along when you're on the other side of the world, might be a little challenging to live in the same household. That was a wake-up call for me, not only for the value that I have for marriage and then but also for realizing when I get married the next time, I want that person to accept all of me. And I hate the phrase, I think it's the Marilyn Monroe quote, like, if you can't have me at my worst and you don't deserve me at my best. I'm like, that does not give you permission to treat other people like crap and to be a jerk to other people.
Right.
What I do believe, though, is that sharing your authentic self and being vulnerable and saying, hey, I'm struggling with this, then that prepares somebody to say, okay, well, do you need me to hold space for you? Do you need me to just listen? Do you want me to fix it? Do you want to brainstorm? Do you want me to just be with you in how you cry? Those moments, that's what builds resiliency, but also it builds relationship. And when we can acknowledge with each other that we are in a space of struggle, admitting you're struggling is not weakness, it's actually strength.
Absolutely. And the more that you suffer in silence, you're not going to get that best version of yourself, and people aren't going to get the best version of you as you sit there and you're suffering with your silence. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people suffer in silence due to the fact that they're afraid to be judged by their peers. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we're extremely cognizant of what others think of us.
And that was the hard part with my parents' relationship. Is my mom afterwards, she said, wow, I realized I didn't really know your dad. And I said, no, you held on to an idea of who he was 50 years ago. But my dad would share things with me that he wouldn't share with my mom because he wanted her to be in this pristine box and just not he never wanted her to see him as weak, where he would share things with me from a space of vulnerability and relational, because I struggled not with alcoholism, but I struggled with my own challenge with bulimia for years. And those experiences were very similar and mirrored dad's experiences, because any sort of addiction really comes from either wanting familiarity, safety, and that whether that's a safe place internally of feeling like I want to have safety in my body, and it's not safe to be in my body, so I'm going to numb my body so I don't feel it. Or control, that was mine with bulimia, and that was my dad's with how he could control. He was, I mean, my father was able to build a very successful business while being a highly functioning alcoholic. And that was, but he would test that boundary of control as far as how much schnapps he could actually drink and still close customers.
Well,
It
that's
was
how they
different.
validate themselves as alcoholics. Well, I'm still maintaining my job. I'm still doing all the
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
because they become
And
functional.
it was functional. And so it's
Right.
maintaining that semblance of control. And then the last one is that validation and that social acceptance that we receive. And it's hard because when we receive acceptance for trying, it doesn't actually give us acceptance for our results. So a lot of people get acceptance around trying and trying to go for a goal, trying to do something new, trying to do something brave, but they aren't actually moving and getting those results. So it's just like if you have a friend and they're struggling with losing weight and you say, "Oh, but you look great as you are," or you look fabulous in that dress. Then that gives them validation if they're used to saying, "Oh, well, no, I need to lose 15 pounds." Then they're getting validation, even though they know they have a need and they know they have a want, they know that may even have a health issue, but because they're getting validation for their current state, they stay in that same social pool because they're scared to change themselves for fear of losing the flock. And that's the one that we forget with fight, flight, freeze, is there's also flock. And that's why my family was flabbergasted that my dad would leave the military to go pursue like entrepreneurship and acting, because he was shifting from the flock, and it was a different type
Mm,
of they had to adapt their relationship of who he was to them because he was no longer in that space.
wow. That, gosh, you and Marie have a lot in common. It's funny to me, you guys, the way that you're, because she's been my co-host lately. So it's funny listening to a lot of what you're saying because she's going through a lot of this, and a lot of what you saying is what she's saying too. Like, I mean, you guys are obviously, kind of going through a lot of the same, I think, mental space
Yeah.
is what I'm trying to say. But anyhow, let's take a quick break. When we come back, let's kind of go through the chronological order of how you started your podcast, TEDx speaker, and the book. Let's talk
Yeah.
about how that all started and kind of we'll go down the chronological order of that. So we'll take a quick break and then we'll come back and talk about it. All right, let's see.
Welcome to Sick Call with Doc, a podcast dedicated to eradicating veteran suicide. With 22 veterans lost every day, we believe that's 22 too many. Join us as we bring you inspiring stories, heartfelt conversations, and a community that cares. Because no matter what, you are not alone. We were there for you then, and we're here for you now. Follow, like, and share our mission. Together, we can make a difference. Inspiring hope, saving lives.
American made, veteran owned, we are Doc Goodbeard. It's more than just looking good. When it comes to your beard, we believe you can have it all. Thoughtfully designed, unique fragrances, and affordable prices. We strive to provide a line of uniquely scented balms and oils that you won't find in other products. Come on, rock with Doc, and remember, it's all about the beard, man. So what do you say? Let's take that average beard and make it badass. Go to docbeard.com. All right, and we're back. All right, so Kimberly, we'll go ahead and have you kind of, take us down the chronological order of how you got yourself, as the founder of Crown Yourself and Communication Queen, the bestseller book you wrote, and kind of take us down that whole, the path.
So I mean, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 5, selling bags of glitter water to my streets of suburbia. That was my jam.
Wow.
My mom pushed me in the stroller, passing out flyers for their business. So I got the entrepreneur bug very early on, but I also got the showbiz bug as well. So I started out my first business was when I was 19 years old, teaching Pilates, because Pilates was the only way that I started to feel good in my body. And it retrained my parasympathetic nervous system, because when you grow up with an addict, like, my nervous system was just fried and unsympathetic, on high drive all the time. And I didn't have a way to rest and digest. Pilates trained me in how to do that. And once I started regulating my nervous system, suddenly I started to make better decisions. I started to make better body decisions. And my bulimia within 2 years, completely gone. No psychological or medical intervention.
Pilates is kind of like a lot of the breathing and meditation and kind of like yoga too, a little bit.
Everyone says that, but it was invented by a German dude. So, like, back in the 1920s. So it also is a really intense form of exercise. It's known as, it was originally started by Joseph Pilates as called Contrology, but that's not the sexiest marketing name. So it's all about how to control the body from the core, and every movement stems from the core. But it was my favorite thing when I would get these, like, big weightlifting dudes coming onto my table, and they're like, oh, sweet little cute girl is gonna push me. And I was like, watch, I will have you shaking in literally 2 minutes.
You're not really strong unless you have a strong core.
You're not strong unless you have a strong core. And most people are only working their I think it's it's been a hot minute since I've taught Pilates, fast twitch muscle fibers versus slow twitch. And so we have multiple muscle fibers, and the muscles that are closer to the bone, which are what Pilates works, is those help build not only stronger bone, but they also are a different type of muscle that you're working. So if you're working a completely different type of muscle, even if it's the same muscle, you're working the fibers differently, it's going to change how you show up for it. And so I would have guys holding a tabletop position that were like, I do 500 sit-ups a day. I was like, okay, well, let's see if you're doing 500 sit-ups correctly, because it's all about really ensuring that the body is moving in the correct body mechanics. And more often than not, I see it all the time with people who have, like, at the gym, I'm like, oh, don't do that, you're going to hurt your back. But they're lifting, gigantic amounts of weight and whatnot, or putting, like, I had this one woman who came to me, and she's like, yeah, my boyfriend put a 50-pound weight on my back while holding plank. And I was like, well, that's why you're having a problem, because your plank was in incorrect form.
Right.
So but that was a place that I got to really thrive in my love of details, and in seeing how I could lead from a place of authenticity, of saying, I've never liked exercise. That was never my jam. I had to learn how to love exercise, and I learned how to love it through Pilates, and I would share my story.
Really had to put you in tune with your body. as well,
Yeah,
right?
I
Yeah.
because I didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't run a mile to save my life. Like I was an exercise-induced asthmatic. I literally could not run down the block. But now I've run
Yeah.
7 marathons
Wow.
because of Pilates. So that was I didn't come into personal development or mindset work because through the mental realm. I came through it through the body.
Hmm.
So that's why I incorporate the body into my coaching, into how I work with people, because the body keeps a score.
So do you think the Pilates thing really sets you into your trajectory?
Yeah, 1,000%.
Wow.
Because it was from that I was doing that while simultaneously pursuing my career in entertainment as a screenwriter, had my first film that I co-wrote, produced, directed, it distributed by Lionsgate, up on Netflix. It was like a high-flying motocross drama, and it was super fun. I YouTubed all the motocross stuff, but I did understand how to tell a good story. And there's only 7 stories ultimately that humans resonate with. And I realized that the through line of all my varied careers has always been story. I was changing people's stories of what was possible for their bodies with Pilates. I transformed people's stories about belonging and fitting in. I know for a fact that film, Bro, has saved 3 lives from going down a drug and alcohol infused dark path. And it also allowed me to really help a little boy who was in the cancer ward at Children's Hospital, which was super cool because he just was a fan of motocross. And it turned out the movie that I wrote was his mother's favorite. And I was like, what?
Wow.
And I never would have had connections in the motocross world had I not written it, but I never would have had connections in the motocross world because that was not my interest. What was my interest was telling a good story about what is the difference between fitting in and belonging. And from that space of storytelling and seeing the lifelong dream achieved at 24, I'm like, well, what do I do next? And why am I only 80% fulfilled? And I looked at what I loved about the movie making process and I said, I actually want more control. Simultaneously at that time, I was presented with an opportunity to come on board a e-commerce product as a consultant for taking this product to market. I saw the product. I said, I can sell that. It would go in every Pilates studio. It would be an amazing fit for helping rehab backs. I said, I don't just want to be a consultant. I want to be a partner. And so I jumped on board with that company for 2 years and then had a successful exit from that company. Though at the time I didn't see it as successful. I felt like I lost my company. I felt like a failure. I didn't see it for the success that it was of getting bought out. But then I signed the buyout agreement 3 weeks before I got married to my who I call my forever husband, and the amazing baby daddy to our beautiful 3 children. And we set off on our honeymoon, and I was like, what do I do when I get back? And we started brainstorming like 2 entrepreneurs do. And I leaped off the couch and I said, crown yourself. And he's like, what's that? And I said, well, that's the name of my company. Because I had been in beauty pageants. I had done Miss California. I always loved wearing the crown. But that idea of the crown really shifted when I did Miss California. Because that was after I'd healed myself from bulimia. And being able to walk onto a stage in front of 4,000 people in a bikini, loving my body, being so proud of how far I had come, not actually and no longer needing the validation of 7 faceless judges hiding in the shadows. I was like, I don't need you to give me a crown. I already got one on my head. And so that shifted everything for how I showed up in the world when it came to my bodies. It took a while.
Dang, you did the Miss California? Oh, sheesh.
I did. I
Wow.
won
All
Miss
right.
Congeniality.
Dang. Well, that's awesome.
I tell my husband, I said, you had to move from Texas to California to find a country music loving pageant girl. Like you couldn't throw a stone and find one in Texas.
Right.
But we got married. And so that was the formation of my company. And I just didn't quite know what I was doing. And I also had so much fear of rejection. And I had so much fear of starting something new. And I had so much fear of how I would be seen. And it really took the catalyst of getting pregnant with my first son to just propel me forward into not like my success is non-negotiable. And so I went from there, grew our coaching company, Crown Yourself. by 2018, we were fully digital, and we had shifted into like I was out earning my husband. So as we say in our family, I bring home the bacon, he fries it up, because I don't cook. He is an amazing chef. And then by 2020, we ended up getting stuck in Australia during COVID. And we were in the Gold Coast. So it's like what I like to call the Florida of Australia. So it was very laid back. We had a very normal life aside from the one.
This must be him.
That is him. And those are our babies.
Wearing the crowns. Look at all that.
We all got crowns, even my little one.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Now we got to update the pictures, because now we have to add in the girl.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we got to add in our Reagan. So it's been
got 3, right?
Yeah.
3 little ones.
Yeah.
Man.
7, 3, and 3 months.
Wow. Busy. And then looking, you doing all this other stuff.
Yeah. I think I'm one of those. I love being able to be an example to my kids. And I think that the role of mom supersedes the role of CEO always. And I think it's really important to see where your priorities are. And I think it's one of the greatest gifts you can give to your kids is to show them what it takes to pursue your dreams. Because you can say, oh, you can achieve this, you can do all you want to do, you can create all you want to create in this world. But if you aren't actually embodying that, if you aren't actually doing the thing, then they're going to model what you do. They do not listen to what you say. I mean, so you want to look at how.
There's some Pilates.
There's the Pilates.
Ooh.
Yep.
That looks tough.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Ooh. Yeah, that one right there. No.
Pilates, that's core strength right there.
Yeah,
so that was my first business, Fitness with Kim. That was on the set of our film Bro and the release. And I was the only female.
I'm gonna have to go check that out now.
Yeah, it's funny because I'll show the trailer to some of my clients now, and they're like, "Oh my God, you co-wrote that?
You did that?"
Yeah, because it's very gritty. It's very there's some seedy underbelly, but at the same time, I said it's a story. Like, we understand a human story. And when we can be with that story, and when we see the capacity for us to change our own story at any point in our lives, I mean, that's one of the things that is my greatest, the greatest piece of my dad's story is that in the end, after 50 years of being an alcoholic, he changed his story. And that is a testament to possibility. And that's why my TED Talk was called Becoming a Warrior for Possibility, because I will fiercely advocate for you becoming who you desire to be and leaning into that. And I realized that was a gift. It was a gift that I was shamed for as a child, because, no one wants their 5-year-old daughter correcting their behavior when they're drunk. But at the same time, like, I have this capacity, and I really believe it's a God-given gift, that I can, when someone tells me their dream, when someone tells me what they want to do, I see it before they do. I've had many clients say, like, you just saw that belief in me. And I tell them, borrow my belief in you, because if I can do it, if I can do any of this, you can too. You can create your dreams too, whatever those are. And when my son tells me what he wants to create, I believe him. And I think that that's the greatest gift that you can give, is you believe him, instead of saying, oh, you'll grow out of that astronaut dream when you're older, when life hits you. And I remember when I was 16 years old, I was entered into a screenwriting competition. And I got to be paired with these mentors who were professional screenwriters in Hollywood, because back then that was my passion. And I was sitting at the donut counter, because they always gave out donuts for some reason to screenwriters, never to the actors, but to the writers. And I'm standing there next to this.
The ones who just sit all day, huh?
Oh yeah. And I'm in my little dress, and I'm like, I was 16 going on 32 before, and I'm there, and I'm so excited to learn from them, to get their mentorship, to learn and to glean their knowledge. And I'm listening to this one screenwriter, professional screenwriter, written a few big movies. And he was like, yeah, that's cute. You're so green. You're so new. And I was like, I think that's honestly the benefit of being new at something is you go in with the fool's archetype of, I'm just going to do it. I don't know how the right way to do it is, but I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to go for it. And that's why I highly recommend people get a hobby. Get a hobby that allows you to challenge something, whether it's like for us, we're writing a children's book and releasing one this year called It's Just a Fart,
Nice.
because I have 2 boys.
Yeah.
But that hobby has allowed me to practice having a beginner's mindset. And so often when we are a professional at something and have achieved a lot in one area, we can think we know it all. And, oh, this is just how this is done. Well, is it? I mean, that's how you've done it, but have you gotten to that space? And I remember standing there at the donuts table with this screenwriter and saying, oh my God, if I ever feel this way about my career, my job, my life, I will change it. Because I never want to feel like, you'll just wait until you get older and then, it all goes downhill. I'm like, I am a relentless optimist, and not naively so. Like, I think the great
That
thing
answer
about,
did not sit well with you.
yeah, it did not. And I think that there's a difference. Like, there's a whole in personal development in that space, there's a lot of talk around toxic positivity. And I don't like the framing of that, because positivity in itself, when it's really grounded and rooted, like we've talked about, like it being grounded, it comes from being able to hold the dark with the light. Like when you have experienced tragedy and challenge and hardships, you actually have a greater capacity to hold more joy, because you have more depth, because you can see that there is more light, but you got to swim out of the deep end and get to that space where you come up for air and see how much light and opportunity there is.
Yeah. My gosh. Yeah. So with your path now, how did you start to think about, uh, developing a podcast and writing a book and I mean, obviously you've thought about a lot of things in your life and now you want to put it down on paper
Mhm.
and stuff like that. So how did you get to that level?
The podcast started out of feeling like a fraud, actually. I was in a part of a podcast mastermind, and we were all talking, like I was doing some guesting on some podcasts, but I didn't actually have my own podcast. And I was in this mastermind with some big podcasters, and I was like, I should probably have one. So I launched it. And originally, my podcast was not called the Crown Yourself Podcast. It was called The Princess and the Bee, on all the bees to becoming the queen of your life. Bank accounts, boys, babies, businesses, all the bees. There's a lot of bees. And I eventually was like, why did I not do it in my own brand of Crown Yourself anyway? So we shifted the branding in 2021 or 2022. And but the Crown Yourself podcast is really for conscious leadership development and high performance. And that the power of the podcast and where it's at now after over 5 years of having it is, it's given me an access point of influence and connection to people that I don't think I would have ever had the ability to connect with before. And I think that that's a beautiful tool and asset to be able to generate mentors that are where you want to be in your life, if you provide them with an audience. So it's a win-win collaborative opportunity. And I've had mentors that have built massive companies become friends just because we're on the podcast. And so I had my podcast from 2019. I still do. And when we got stuck in Australia, my primary form of lead generation for my coaching business had been live events and workshops and speaking. And that was not happening, not only because of COVID, but because of my visa. And
Mm.
so we were over there in Australia, and I said, well, I still need to generate business for my company. And I asked my team, I said, let's double down on guesting, because we tried some other things, but guesting, I said, well, let's try guesting. And within 50 interviews, we generated over $70,000 of new business revenue. And now it's
Wow.
over $250,000. And I said, I think that this could be for every industry. I think people can go on and share their story, not only for the benefit of sharing their story, but for selling their books, for like, there's a reason we got to bestseller within and stayed there for a week in the top 0.5% of Amazon books. Like, there's a reason. It came from being on multiple podcasts and sharing that story and that message on podcasts. And so with podcasting and going on podcasts, like, it allows you an intimate environment to have a powerful conversation and then to broadcast that conversation to however many people in a new audience. And I think it's an incredible tool for collective understanding. And one of the reasons why I love guesting and why I do so much of it, not only because it's a profitable lead generation asset for our business, but also because when I was started out teaching Pilates, that was the first time I was exposed to new patterns of thinking outside of my own home that was quite dysfunctional. As functional as it was in many parts, there were many dysfunctions as far as communication, passive aggressive tactics, gaslighting, all the things. And so when I left my home and moved into my own apartment, and because I was making some good money teaching Pilates, I was surrounded by 10 people a day, 10 new people a day, giving me new mindsets, new belief systems, new ideas as to how life could be. And that's the power of a podcast. Because if you're struggling with something with mental health, or something where you want to change your life, or you want to change your identity, or you want to change your relationships, or you keep attracting the same relationships, or you want to start a business, if you've never done that before, the fastest way to fast track your success is to start getting around people that do. And I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew that some belief systems that I'd had, like the belief that I was broken, damaged, and a victim, were only serving to attract jerks into my life. And they were only causing me internal suffering. So I didn't want to feel that anymore. So I started listening to what my clients were saying. And I would pick up on like, oh, this one client has a really amazing marriage. Maybe ask her a few questions on how she maintains such a beautiful relationship with her very successful husband. Like, oh, this client has a really successful life and is a mom. Maybe ask her some questions on how she is able to maintain, because I've always wanted to be a mom. So I started asking my clients questions just as I'm training them. And I learned just as much from them as they did from me as they were working out. And that's what I see with podcasting now, is like, you have so much access to just learn from other people and borrow their belief systems, because every belief system is like clothes. It's like, you may have a certain style, a certain aesthetic that you like to wear, but maybe you actually look better in a different style. You just haven't tried it on yet. And if you try on that different style of thinking and you try on that different style of behavior, you might actually find that you like yourself a bit more. You might actually find that you love yourself. You might actually find that you are attracting more and better relationships into your world where they're not gossipy or downers. You might actually find that everything you want is on the other side of your belief system and the stories that you're telling yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense. I never even really thought about it like that. That's what, that's why I love doing this too. It brings a lot of realizations of things. Like, there's a lot of things that you've said, I'm like, wow, I didn't really ever put it that way. Or maybe I thought along that lines. I just never heard anybody else really articulate it. So that's awesome. Now, starting the podcast and doing that now, is that what inspired you to do the book itself?
Well, the book was inspired by mortality mindset. So in 2021, I lost my father, my aunt, my grandma, and two family friends, both to a drug overdose. Actually, one was an accidental overdose. I'm sure the other one was an accidental overdose, but one was fentanyl. And losing a friend who's 28 years old, that, who had so much life ahead of him, that really hits you. That really hits. Like, losing my dad was a really powerful transition for me. Being able to have the conversation with my aunt before she passed around her life, her wanting to share her story with me, as much of it as possible, for as long as she could, 3 days before she passed, just so that she could feel seen in her experiences, like I treasure that moment. That is a moment to be held in reverence for the rest of my life. Like that is an honor to be able to hold someone and be in that space with them. And then by the time we moved back from Australia, we moved to California, we helped pack up my grandma's estate, because that was my mom's mother, her sister, and her husband within 1 year. It was a rough year. And I had a baby, and I started a second business, and we moved. It was a lot. And that and so we're packing up my mother's estate, or my grandma's estate. We were going through my dad's stuff. We moved my mom with us to Texas, and now we are here. And once we got settled into our home, I really started thinking, like, what would I regret if at the end of my life I didn't become or complete? And I said, wow, the thing that I would regret would be not becoming, like, the first thing that came to me was, not having my third child. And so we did. And then the second thing was not becoming a solo published author. And I'd written a book before. It was a collaborative book. It's called The Start: Journey to Entrepreneurship. But I didn't feel like it was really written because I spoke it. It was more of an interview-based format type of book. It was a book geared toward generating PR and building authority in your company. And I did it, but it didn't give me the juice of like sitting and writing and being in the space of that resistance and doing that dance. And so I committed to finishing this book, and I got about halfway through it by 2024. And I looked at the book and I said, oh my God, this is another half-written book in my Scrivener file. And Scrivener is like writing software. And I said, I have to finish it. And I said, I looked at my two kids, I looked at my husband, and I booked an Airbnb for 4 days to go away. And I said, you're going to take the kids. I'm going to finish this book and get it done. And I did. I finished it. And then I said, we're publishing it on International Podcasting Day, which is September 30th. So I had a very hard and fast deadline to hit. And I had to tie the book to my business because my business had always been my greatest excuse for not completing my business, my book. Because as soon as I'd start writing, we'd get some new clients in, get some new operations, start some new programs, and the writing of the book would have to go to the wayside. So I had to see the long-term vision for the book. So that's why this one was the first. But now that it's out, now that I did the process, I'm like, I'm so addicted to it.
How many more books do we got coming out now?
Yeah, well, now it's a fart book. So it's a children's fart book. Yeah.
You totally switched gears right there, huh?
Well, and that one I wanted to do with my kids because I homeschool my kids and we're teaching them on principles of entrepreneurship. So my eldest son, he's like, they were my board. They were my creative directors. They got to sit in and see, okay, this illustration is funny. This one's not. We hired an illustrator, Amanda Swift. She's amazing. And so that opportunity to involve them with a project and have it be something fun that we then get to sell, that then they get to put out into the world, and they're going to be my salespeople. That's what the skill set that they're learning is, the skill set of influence and persuasion, which will serve them for the rest of their life, no matter what they do.
Wow. Yeah, there's definitely going to be some life lessons, and it's cool though, and it's teaching them a lot at their little young ages, and they get to see something.
Yeah.
From start to finish, and then they get to see the results of it. Like when you get that book in your hand, that's going to be amazing. You know what I mean? And they'll be so excited about it too, because they played a part of it, like I remember that, or
I mean, the funnest part was when Make Every Podcast Want You came out, and I got the first batch of books come in, and my 3-year-old, he was walking around with this book going, it's Mommy's book. It's Mommy's book. Mommy's book is out. And we walked into a coffee shop to celebrate together, and he was like walking around showing other people.
Oh, gosh,
and
that's great.
It was so cool because, I mean, when you have an online
business, that is a good sales line though, right there.
Right?
Have a 3-year-old walking around, little cutie guy. My mommy's book. Yeah. That's great.
It was amazing. It was so amazing because when you have an online business, like they can't they don't really see what I do. Like they know that I go into my office. They know I record some podcasts. I know I'm coaching a client, but they don't really get to actually have like a touching, tangible thing. And that I think is the difference of when they get. So when It's Just a Fart comes out, like I'm giddy. I'm giddy for them to just hold the book and be like, this is ours. Like we were able to do that.
Let's pull it up. Look at this.
Look at this. The book that will bring flatulent fun to the whole family.
Poot. Oh, this is great. All right. That's awesome.
Yep.
How many pages is it? Do you
It's
guys know yet?
just
Or is
20
it like
pages. And I
20?
mean,
Nice.
the date needs to be changed on the website because it's coming out this fall in time for school. We've just pushed it back
Perfect.
with publication so many times with having another baby. That was
Yeah.
one thing where I
Yeah,
definitely
that could step back things a little bit, huh?
my skill set, like overestimating my capabilities. That is still a detriment that I am working on. That is a learning curve that I'm still working on. But I know, we got, as long as we get it out this year, that's my goal. Like one book a year for the next 13 years is my goal.
Are you guys done with kids? You guys
Oh, no,
got
we're
room
done.
for more?
No, we're getting a dog. But
You said
other
that
than
fast as hell right there. No, we're done. We're done.
yeah. That we have our holy trinity. We
You got
got our
3,
girl
right? It's
finally.
3.
We're good.
Yeah. There you go. Well, it's gonna be a party, you know.
Yeah,
And
I really
they're all pretty close in age, yeah.
7, 3, and 3 months. So they're about 3.5, 4 years apart
Okay, there's
each.
a little bit of some space in there. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's nice because our 7-year-old is he's such a leader. He's got like, when we had him in school in Australia, they were like, he's got leadership potential. I said, thank you for not calling him a dictator.
Hey, I think it's that first kid thing. I don't know. Same thing with
Maybe.
my first kid. Same on I was very go get her, go get them, and
Yeah.
it's how my daughter is too. And then my son, who's the number 2, different path,
Sorry.
different path.
Yeah. Different path. And I think it's recognizing each child's gifts and not
Yeah,
projecting onto them what they should be doing.
I think as parents, we expect all of our kids to kind of all be the same, right? I think that but
Yeah.
that's an unrealistic expectation because I'm sure you're not like your brother or sister. There's a lot of things that we definitely have a lot of differences on. But yeah, kids throwing that in the mix, I'm sure that complicates things at time. You don't always have the time that you want to go do this because you got them.
Yeah, and it's really for high performers. It's not like every excuse you have is probably going to be a really valid one because
Right.
it's not an excuse, it's a reprioritization.
Sure.
And so really looking at what are the priorities. And so this summer, like we just did a reprioritization of like we used to put my son into a ton of camps for socialization and exposure to other different types of activities and things that he might want to continue for the school year for classes, whether it's music or art or something like that. And this summer I was like, no, we're getting a dog. So I'd rather him just like learn how to have the responsibilities of what it takes to nurture and grow a pet and to be home and to understand the prep that's also going into releasing this book for the fall.
Well,
So
that's good too because I think that's the problem with us is that we feel like we want to keep our kids so busy all the time, right? And activity, because we don't want them to be bored, but I think boredom is good for kids.
it's a skill set. Yeah.
I don't think people understand that when your child says they're bored, that is an opportunity for you.
Yeah, to expand their imagination.
Absolutely. And but that's the thing, with parents, they want to some of them just keep them in sports all the time, keep them, just every summer. The kids, they start to look run down, like the kids look tired because they're just activity driven.
Yeah.
But that could be a problem later down the road as they get older. And all of a sudden they don't got this activity, that activity. Now, oh my gosh, what do I do with myself? And they don't know how to do that. So I think that's great that you guys are kind of stepping back a little bit and trying something different for him and giving him an opportunity to be a little bored and
Mhm.
figure it out, go figure it out a little bit. Sometimes it's okay to go make up your own game, go make up go play with this or that, and then you get imaginative. I do it all the time with my little 8-year-old. It's like, you're bored, well, hey, go,
Cool.
yeah, go go unboard yourself. That's being bored is a you problem.
Yeah, I think it's such a skill set to be able to sit with. And it's hard because I mean, we are so
It
driven by
is.
convenience
Well,
of like,
because
oh, well,
too,
we'll
when the
just turn on
kids
the
are bored,
TV or
who do they bug? When they're bored, who are they bugging?
oh, mama.
Mom and dad, constantly. Mom, dad, mom. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh! But when they're onto something, they ain't bugging you.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah.
that's the hard part, I guess. With sometimes with parenting, that's another hard part is, hey, they got to have no activities. I try to tell my wife, babe, through the summer, let's like maybe this week we do like a something, but the next week let's kind of like scale it off, not do as
Mhm.
much, or we don't have to have something every day. It's
Yeah.
okay for them to be a little bored and go figure it out and how to entertain each other or fight with each other, whatever it ends up being. But that's the hard part because, like I said, they're bugging you, they're fighting with the siblings. They can't figure it out. Well, eventually they do.
Eventually they
And
do.
they
And they
eventually
figure it
do.
out. Yeah.
You
And
just got to
it's
get through that hard part of them bugging you all the time, and you got to redirect. It's called setting up healthy boundaries for yourself too, because we as parents, we don't even give ourselves boundaries with our kids. They follow us to the restrooms. Some parents don't even get a break to go to the restroom. You know what I mean? And
that
you
would
got
be
to
me.
be, you got to set those healthy boundaries and get yourself that opportunity. And then they're sleeping in the bed with you guys, and like, bro, like there's no boundary at that level. Now your kids is part of everything, and then when you get them outside, they're like, "What? I don't know, but this is weird." So getting them to figure it out is hard, but once you do that, they will figure it out.
It's hard and it takes time, and it also looks at like what's the age of appropriateness as well.
Sure,
It's like because
right.
one of the when I was talking to our ops manager and she's East Asian, and she was like, "Oh no, I still sleep in the same bed as my kids. Like that's just our culture. Like, and it's a different culture. So I think it's looking at what really works for you.
Sure.
And
Yep.
I mean, for us, like what we found is like my 3-year-old still won't leave me alone in the bathroom. He's like, I'm going to help you. I'm like, I think I got
Yeah.
this, bud.
Yeah,
But
you need toilet paper, that mommy? Like, don't touch the toilet paper.
but he's at the same time, it's like now my 7-year-old is at the age where he's like, oh, I understand boundaries. And so,
Right.
and he's starting to see, okay, well, we have this boundary and we do this, and this is more appropriate than this. And so under like it comes with time. And I think navigating expectations, especially as the leader of your household, that that can be a challenging one because so often I see adults projecting the expectations of adulthood onto children.
Right.
And they
Yes.
are not, they are children. And
Like we expect them to already know something a lot of the times too, and we just go bam, and then it's like, wait a second, I never told them about this or
yeah,
anything, and you just lost your mind on them.
yeah. Same with especially like the concept of privilege, like,
Mhm.
and that we live in a great country, and if you have food on the table every night and a roof over your head and an iPad, you're good. Like you
I think
got
everybody's got an iPad nowadays.
you
Sheesh,
have
man, or iPhone.
privilege.
Yeah.
And recognizing that. But I had a great conversation with a parent who was like, she was an incredibly successful entrepreneur. She's like, my son doesn't know how hard I struggle. I said, because he's not supposed to. Because the whole point was you were building a better
You
life
don't want
for your
them to
children.
carry that burden, right? I
Yeah.
mean, good Lord, that's a lot of
Yeah.
weight to carry.
Yeah. So the whole goal is to get better with every generation. And
Yes.
how can you imbue those principles of understanding charity and understanding support and understanding that not everybody has in need? How do you use your success to then serve if you want to? And navigating those moral conversations of like, I mean, you don't have to, but you have those conversations and keep it an open book. So, but speaking of family, I do have a daughter that I need to go feed.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no worries. Yeah. Oh, yes. It's about
Like I
that
said,
time,
I'm
right?
hearing her and I'm like, oh, we've got a little log for her.
Yeah. She's probably like, Mom. And she's
Like,
probably
I'm
just
hungry.
screaming. Yeah. I want this, Baba. All right. Well, yeah. So we'll just go ahead and talk about real quick where we can find your book. Talked about your website. Everybody can go check out her website, www.crownyourself.com. You also can go check out www.communicationqueen. Her book is on Amazon. You can go check it out there as well. Make Every Podcast Want You is the name of the book. And my gosh, I appreciate you coming on. I know we went long with conversations prior to this, so we've been going probably 2 hours in general. So yeah, the baby's like she needs her mommy.
Like, well, I'm hungry, but I have loved this conversation, Brian. I just want to thank you for your support of vets and what you're doing, bringing these conversations to the table of sharing not only from vet perspectives, but from the children of vets, because so often it's very easy to see our lives as ancillary and that no one understands us. But sometimes when we can expand the horizons of our own.
It's easy to do, but you know what? We need people out there like you, and I'm sure there's more to come from you. And you always touch. But thank you so much, and we'll see you.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.